pleasant good afternoon. Pleasant good Friday afternoon, one and all. Welcome to the Friday afternoon's episode of Speaking Out, Exposing Corruption, Incompetence. Today is Friday, the 28th day of November in the year of our Lord 2025. So welcome one and all. Share the live as you come on. Share, and we are going to be with you. You know, today, Friday, another great day that the Lord has made. Let's rejoice and be glad in it. Let's give praise and thanks for being in the land of the living. It is a privilege to be in the land of the living, and we should never, ever take that for granted. Yeah, Friday afternoon, you know, this week finishes so quickly now, you know, as you're coming out to the end of the year. Here we are, Friday. Just the other day, we were here for another Friday. And by the time you make two turns, you're on to another Friday again. By the time we come on again for the next program, the month of November will be over. And it's going to be the month of December, my Lord, the last month in the year. So, yes, share, give thanks. You know, talking about giving thanks, yesterday in the U.S. was Thanksgiving Day. And I'm sure, as I indicated on Wednesday, we must have a lot to be thankful for. At least we should be thankful for life. We should be thankful for life, which is that precious gift. And those of you who would have indulged yesterday, Thanksgiving Day, you know, U.S. called it Turkey Day. But, you know, Guyana don't take left, so I'm sure Guyana would have had Thanksgiving to yesterday. Today is known as Black Friday, with all the sales and so on. Guyana and Turkey left, they get Black Friday as well. Monday is going to be known as Cyber Monday. And again, Guyana and Turkey left. So yes, welcome. I know Friday afternoon, it's time for people to wind down. Having had perhaps a rough week, you're going to wind down, enjoy your weekend, look forward to a new productive week. So welcome. My colleague CC is in the studio waiting to bring you the credible, valuable information. We have so much to tell you today. Oh, my Lord. Confusion, yeah, according to the Rasta. Confusion in the house. Confusion in relation to tint and who must get tint and whether tint law must be enforced. We're going to go through it this afternoon. And some other stuff. So share. We're not going to bother with the roll call. Again, I get bounced out of the studio. And when I came back, a lot of the early students were off. I recognized, however, that the first man who was in at exactly 2 o'clock when the program was scheduled, when the gates was open, was Wayne from the UK. Wayne Little from the UK came in early. Others came in early as well. But we're going to forego that this afternoon. We're going to go straight into the announcements and then go into the meaty subjects that we have to discuss. So there goes with the announcements. You know, we start with those sad ones first. And perhaps I should remind you or remind them that today is 623 days since Sergeant Alex Vaughn was shot and killed. Police Sergeant Alex Vaughn shot and killed 623 days ago. And apart from the initial report from the police, we have not heard anything else. And they talk about transparency. Let me see what is going to happen. Then watching, you know, oh, ma, what is wrong to tell the public this is the position with the investigation? This is where we are at. What, you're not hearing anything from them? And they talk about transparency. And moving on, we had a funeral service of the late retired Lieutenant Colonel Claude Fraser yesterday. I understand it was well attended. And today should have been by now one thing that I've finished with the cremation. He was cremated today. May peace be granted to his soul. Rest in peace, Claude. Claude was always a joy to be around with. But as I've said repeatedly on this program, all of us have to go that way. All of us, right? All them are thieving, all them are telling lie on people. Whatever they do, we all have to go that way. We all have to go. And that is why I continue to say that death is one of the most irrational fears mankind has. Because you have to go, so why fear the inevitable? Prepare for it. Live a good life. And moving on, we told you too about the death of Um, we, no, listen, you again. It doesn't give us pleasure to announce these things, but when it happens, we have to tell you that a former Lance Corporal 3563 Alexander Bentic, I understand that he passed away on Wednesday. He was the brother of retired Assistant Commissioner Marlon Chapman. He is Marlon's brother, and he passed away on Wednesday. Then I learned only this morning of the death of former or retired woman Lance Corporal Juna, or 80851 was her number. She passed away on a Sunday yesterday. Junior passed away. And for the people in BV and around, I told you some time ago of the death of the Trevor Hopkinson, the son of Lyde Hopkinson from Communal Road, the black making man. That funeral is scheduled for tomorrow. Viewing from 1 to 2 at Sandy's Funeral Parlor. Service at the same location from 2 to 3. There's Sandy's Funeral Parlor in Georgetown. So I want to express condolences to the relatives and friends of all those persons who have deceased, and wish that the good Lord give you the strength to go through this difficult time. Yes, unfortunately, Claude Fraser was the brother. He was the younger brother of Claudius Fraser, the police officer Claudius Fraser, where Claude Fraser was his younger brother. Claudius was an officer in the Guyana Police Force, and his brother Claude was a member of the Guyana Defense Force, an officer, outstanding officer in the Guyana Force. So that is the relationship, 420. And birthday greetings, the more pleasant announcements, birthday greetings today. Oh man, a very good friend of mine, retired woman Assistant Commissioner Vesta Adams, is observing a natal day today. Vesta, I gotta give you a special. I shouted out. I called you. I messaged you this morning. I gotta give a special shout out on this program. You know, Vesta used to be outstanding police officer, finance officer. People in the finance office were afraid of Vesta. You got to cross your T's and dot your I's. She never met sport. Any little fraud and so on, she used to detect. Then she went to the training institution. She was there for some while. Outstanding police officer, woman police officer. And then she was a member of the Police Service Commission that I chaired, right? So yeah, Vesta is observing a natal day today. Also observing a day today is retired Senior Superintendent Stephen Mansell. Stephen is observing a natal day, a birthday, as we would say today. I want to wish all those who are observing today, all those who observed recently, and all those who are observing in the near future, all the best on that special day. One more trip around the sun. One more trip around the sun. And before I bring in CC, I want to give special wishes, anniversary wishes to a dedicated student, Carlisle, who's always on this program. Carlisle, he celebrating his 50th wedding anniversary. 50th wedding anniversary to Carlisle. So congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. on that special occasion. Let me bring in CC, and then we're going to go on for a few more, and we're going to delve, or we're going to dive into the subject. CC, welcome, my brother. Hope you had a restful night. Hope you're looking forward to a fantastic weekend. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hope so. Had a good night, a good day. I think my grandchildren going to get me busy tomorrow. I think I have to carry my grandson to do some swimming, and then he want things after the swimming, But that's what grandparents are for, Let me say my deepest sympathy to Marlon Chapman, retired assistant commissioner, on the death of his brother. And I always say, as commander, I had some outstanding DDO divisional detective officer. Yes, there were many in the police force, but talking about those who worked with me whilst I was commander. And Marlon was one. You had Philip Armstrong, you have Charles Allen, and you had Cuthbert when we were dealing with people in the Gaza Strip. That's where we used to call box on the Gaza Strip. And let me tell you a bit about Marlon, is that he's a guy who used to solve crime. I know he had a knack for solve crime. Uh, Very quietly, he will go about and solve crime. I remember we got a message early morning that a guy came in from the States after 10 years, went to Blackbush, and the next morning they found his headless body. So I said, Marlon, you're a baby. Just keep it on, bother. I can solve it. Went into Blackbush. And in a matter of days, he found the head and he recovered a whole set of jewelry. He got the weapons that they used to behead the man and a whole set of things of evidential value. Two persons, I think, confessed to the crime, but he didn't base his thing on confession. He looked for other evidence. Confession for he was always secondary. And I remember an amazing one where they found a man's body in at Rose Hall, and there were no marks of violence on the body. And Marlon, I think he torn back the eyelids, and he saw blood shots. Just you see, this man was strangled. Them blood shots are telling me that he was strangled. We didn't see marks of violence. Dr. Bridgman did the post-mortem, and he opined that the cause of death was manual strangulation. And we were able to solve that one also. Vesta, happy birthday. We talked this morning for a long time, but Britain's never too much. And as you mentioned, Paul, Vesta was outstanding. And then I remember when she was in the Police Service Commission, when promotion time coming up, she and Claire Jarvis, those girls used to delve in them files minutely. You couldn't get past it. They couldn't joke with on anything. Vesta and Claire used to make sure that they had proper checks. They used to go in the office on Sundays, holidays, and so on to check the files. And my good friend Stephen Mansell, happy birthday to you, Stephen. You were an outstanding policeman. You left as a senior soup. You should have been at least an assistant commissioner, but that's when you left, I think they didn't have any police service commission, so you left as a senior superintendent. And I remember you well, Mansell always used to talk about the 3 I's of management. He talk about inspect, investigate, and inform. And I remember him at Springlands there. I told the story before, but we're talking again. He went in the morning, and he was an ASP, and the station sergeant reported to him, 3 prisoners in the lockups, alive and well, sir. Alive and well, sir. Mansell said, let me go and check them. Part of this thing, inspect. And he found a guy in there, a guy that I think he was from Colombia, and some civilian had arrested him the day before. He had some visual injuries, taken to the hospital, and the doctor treated him and sent him away. So he says, sir, I ain't like how this man look, This man, they crump up in the car, no. I said, well, up to you. You're a call wagon. He said, so we're going to carry the hospital. They took him to the hospital, and within 3 hours, the man died because he had some internal injuries. If Mansell wasn't observant, the man would have died in that lockup there. And he always used to talk about the 3 I's of management: inspect, investigate, and inform. Congratulations to you, Stephen. I'm going to get my drinks later on. And I'm going to get my drinks because I tell you some foreign drinks came in for you recently. So I want my foreign drinks.
Yeah. I gotta say, CC, I gotta support you about Vesta. When Vesta was in the Police Service Commission, I was the chair, Vesta, Claire, Mike Samansal, and CC. And let me tell you, despite all the lies what the secretary and them tell, people tell you can't get past Vesta with nothing. We're there and we worked as a team. Even though I was the chair, many times I came up with things and I was overruled. I was overruled, especially when it came to promotion, so much so that the secretary who go and lie in affidavit afterwards had to remark that he had never seen such a fair process when it came to promotion of the Police Service Commission. Because the police had this way of trying to bypass persons. And Brutus was the man, I can call him, who's the admin man. They would write to say that this particular post is not recommended at this time. Why? They can't give any plausible reason why the post is not recommended. And we used to go into it. So we never used to only look at those who were recommended. We looked to see who were not recommended and why they were not recommended. There were many instances where they say the post is not recommended because they did not pass the appropriate qualifying examination. And when we checked, the people passed the examination, but the records weren't updated. Then one of the promotions, I would never forget that, because when it came up, people then they said they didn't pass the examination. So this is strange. So I never trusted the records. So I called some of those persons. I remember one of the persons I called said, sorry, I passed I wrote the examination and I'm awaiting results. You know what these bitches do? Right? They at the training school, they selected the people who they were going to mark. In other words, people took the examination, did not mark all the papers. They cherry picked who to mark and to send to say they passed. And others who they did not like, they did not mark them. And many of those persons turned out that they had passed the examination. That's the type of scrutiny. And Vesta and Jarvis and CC and Mike, right? And we worked diligently to restore some confidence in the system. Because when we took over the Police Service Commission in 2018, there were allegations, credible allegations, investigation that was done, that monies were passed for people to be promoted. And I know the name. Some of them, they're in senior position. I have the report. I have the report that followed the investigation that was done. Names were named as to who pay, the amount of money they pay, who they pay the money to, and all of that. So yeah, we got to mention that. So they just come now and they just talk a lot of crap. You just got to bring the record. Let the truth, as one of them, they said, the truth shall set you free. Speak the truth and shame the devil. That is what that German had written some time ago. So yeah, so Vesta, I got to big you up. And again, Vesta at the finance office, police finance office, the people who are there will tell you nothing ain't getting past Vesta. Nothing ain't getting past. Outstanding officer. So again, Vesta, happy birthday to you, my dear. Somebody asking here about Marlon Chapman's brother. His name was Bentic. He went to Alexander Bentic. He was a special corporal, I understand. I think it might have been in Borbis or somewhere, but that is the name, Alexander Bentic. He passed away, I think it's on Wednesday. Now let me move on and to deal with some other issues. So update, I should tell you, I was in court this morning. That matter, trumped up sexual assault charges came up this morning. Was for the prosecutor to reply to some submissions, written reply to submissions made by my attorneys. That was done, and the matter is now put down for decision on the 20th of February 2026. That is the date when the magistrate will rule on the matter. Then we had in court today, as you would have seen, the Mohammeds. They went back today. I understand based on what is being reported that they had full disclosure today. That is, we're talking about the extradition case where the U.S. Requested the extradition of Azzuddin Mohammed, the leader of the Win Party, and his father on charges for all sort of thing, wire fraud and so on, in Florida. So that trial is ongoing, and this morning I understand from what I've read that the final disclosures were made. That is to say that the prosecutors, those prosecutors they have from Jamaica and I think one from Guyana as well, they presented the documents, and it is now the defense people are going to make some, they have asked for some further time to reply, I think, and the magistrate has said, give them up to the 8th of December to reply, and then the magistrate will rule on the matter on the 10th. I understand the ruling relates to, on the submissions, and the ruling relates to some issue to be raised in a court, whether some aspect of this matter has to be ventilated in the High Court of Guyana. So that is an update on that matter. That is what I've gathered so far. And then I got time to tell you now about this luxury vehicles scam. We can deal with that some other time. But this is developing, and more we are learning about that matter. We are learning more and more about this luxury vehicle scam involving a particular auto dealer, changing VIN and vehicles and all kind of things. I hope that the police are investigating, because there is sufficient evidence out there of suspected criminal activities, sufficient evidence. And I hope they don't tell me, like what Gail Teixeira told the UN body, that the reason they did not investigate the Sugate allegation against Jagdeo was because no report was made to the police. Imagine that. She went to a UN body, and when she was questioned as to why this damning allegation was that the vice president taking big set of money from Chinese businessmen to give them contract and all this type of thing. Why the matter wasn't investigated? That is what the UN body asked. And Gail Teixeira tell them, well, no report was made to the police. No report was made to the police. So I hope that in this case, with all these exposures or exposés, and we hear people on video talking about being scammed and vehicle being changed and all of that. At least 2 or 3 such cases have surfaced. I hope that they have launched a proper investigation. But I never hold my breath, because I understand that the people who are involved are close associates of people in the current government. And I understand that they are part of the whole financial machine for the government. Financial machine. I know once you're supporting the government and you're part of that corrupt arrangement, nothing will happen until you fall out, like in the case of Azzedine Mohammed. They are all chubby. They're driving in the vehicle and all sort of thing, providing guard for them and all sort of thing. And then they fell out. And the only reason they fell out is because the US intervened. So they decided to distance themselves from Azzedine, and now they appear to be bitter enemies, political and otherwise. So yeah, so we have to talk about that. And then we don't take left, We don't take left. We see yesterday, you think only China can get the Great Wall? I see yesterday a big wall put up outside Stabrook Market, they said to beautify. It's part of the city beautification drive. Well, all I got to say is that they look for that. They look for that. Always remember that a promise is a comfort to a fool. They come around nice and smile with you, and you think, not for you, I sympathize with some. But some of them, I ain't going to sympathize. Enough of them decide when they had a chance to make a difference, then exercise the franchise. And that is why we say elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. And talking about elections and consequences before bringing CC, Ralph Gonsalves gone. Ralph Gonsalves, the Prime Minister or the former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They had elections in that island nation yesterday, and gone. Licks like peas. I hope he take he licks like a man. He's the man who tell President Granger, take he licks like a man. 15 seats in the thing. He won one. He won one seat, and the opposition, the then opposition, won the other 40. There's a man who aligned himself with Maduro. He aligned himself with the dictator Maduro, who the U.S. pressuring now. Right? He went there, he get national awards, all sort of thing. He is a man who misled, and I will say that, I'll say that, who misled our president to go to St. Vincent for sign the Argyle Accord with Venezuela. Yeah, remember that? The same Ralph Gonsalves. He been there forever and ever. Since nobody, he was prime minister. All type of allegations made against him, criminal allegations, and he survived. But this time, the people of that island decide, we can't take it no more. We can't take it anymore. So he is gone. He's gone. But they get one seat, so party can be member, he can be leader of the opposition. He's 79 or something like that. Right? So maybe they're gonna make him the leader of the opposition. Because they get one seat, he might take that one seat. Right? So Ralphie, right? Bye, Ralphie. Bye. Right? Some people, the man made some statements during the impasse in 2020. The man called President Granger a sanctimonious gangster. The man said all sort of thing. And I like how Anil Roberts, a minister in Trinidad, used to be Minister of Sports. I don't know what portfolio he holds now. They're putting in Facebook, man. You must look for it. Look for it. Skinny up with all them property, family buying Trinidad and all them type of things. His wife and his son. Anil Roberts, there in the case. He's seen before. And then imagine get the audacity or the temerity to accuse the Trinidad people of interfering with the elections. That is why you say you interfere with the election. When you interfere with guy in the whole process, he didn't know that. So Ralphie, take your seat. Let me bring in CC. CC, you got a few things here to comment on, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I saw a video of the wall that they put up there, you know, and what they're saying is to beautify the place, but the persons operating say they were not consulted. The mayor say he wasn't consulted, you know, but it's them vote for them, so they got to take what they get. They got to take what they get. And Ralph Gonzalez, as you said, carry the president to Argyle with Maduro and make the president sign the thing that he ain't supposed to sign. Had close ties with Maduro. And then he and Trinidad start getting wrong there, but his wife understands he's a Trinidadian. And you know, he got to take his blows, the big man. He got to take his blows. His time done. I think he had about 24 years there as the leader, you know. His time is finished. And he walk away. And he shouldn't even go back in parliament as far as they're concerned. Let somebody else. And talking about that, I think I see like the chairman of the West Indies board of cricket, Shallows. I think he want to sit down there, and there's something in terms of politics and sports brewing with the ICC. So let's see. They might have some issues there with Shallow and his election there.
Yeah, but the ICC, the International Cricket Council, frowns on people being politicians being involved in cricket and all in cricket. The ICC frowns. As a matter of fact, the ICC has been known to suspend boards because of the involvement and the government trying to control the local cricket and so on. ICC has knocked them out. They don't mess with that. They don't mess with that at all. But coming back to this wall, again, is a question. Look, let me tell you this, and they are not to be surprised. That is the way this government operates. No consultation and all this sort of thing. That's how the prayer went there a couple of days before and tell them they're going to beautify the place and so on. But the wall issue was never told to them. So when they turned up yesterday morning and so on, these people, the wall is being constructed. Again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's how you do it. Right? So the people are there, especially at this time, and that is what the campaign is about. This is the time leading up to the festive season when people get the pay in public servants in particular, that November month-end pay and that December month-end pay. That's the time the people look for catch the hand at the people who are selling there. Because if you don't make it during that period of time, you can't make it for the rest of the year. Those supposed to be, that 2 months period is supposed to be the most profitable period, right? But to move down on the people them just like that, to put up this wall, well, let's see how that will go. But I am not surprised. That's the way the government operates. They run roughshod over people. No consultation, no agreement. That is the way they operate. Let me understand it clearly. So you can't be surprised. The people might be disappointed, but they can't be surprised. When SEC talk about the other opportunity, I guess some of them would have voted against them. Some of them might have. But as we say, elections have consequences. Yeah, some of them sit back, even not them, their family and them sit back. Oh, me and going and vote is the same thing and so on. And I still got to work in the morning, so I ain't got time with politics. All sort of foolish stuff that I start. But as Crow said, let me see if I could get Crow to play Crow and y'all hear what Crow say when we talk about things like that, man. Hold on. Give me a minute. Are you look for that? Listen to it.
November 7th, I see black man cry. No blood still running from black people's eye. But I remember when a sunrise, African rise. And I beg black man, please open your eyes. While I was singing and busting me liver string, that man asking me where Atlantic play. Then they put their 14th finger on the shelf. So today, black man, you must blame yourself. Cause when I sing, they never listen where Coco say. Black man's mentality gone Spectrum and PSA. Big lyrics I sing in, they wouldn't listen to me. Black man telling black man, oh black man, come out to party. I remember when I sing Sham, we don't want it. They say black brothers say Coco, you singing shit. So they say through my fault while you strike your heart. Black man, oh you look for that. I want a white black man, always contact it start. Black man, oh you look for that.
That means that's a Crow. So you look for that. Not everybody, let me be fair, not everybody, but Crow say, how you look for that. Right? Crow, Trinidadian, Calypsonian. Now let me move on. I saw a very interesting letter this morning in the Kanko News. And I come on to traffic now, because traffic then dominate perhaps the remainder of this program this afternoon. Y'all recall a few weeks ago, I wrote a letter to the media and I discussed it on this program about their trap that is the Linden-Suzdijk Highway. And I made some recommendations, which a lot of people believe were valid. I said, establish a safety unit, Linden Highway Safety Unit. I said that what they should do is make sure that it is properly equipped with vehicles, warning signs, and ranks and so on. I recommended a roving crisscrossing patrol. So one vehicle traveling in one direction, the next one traveling in one direction. And I said the main objective of that patrol, that group, was to identify dangers on the highway. So if you have a broken down truck, they put up signs and so on. You have water, you have debris on the roadway, they put up signs to warn drivers. And I went on to say that I believe if that was done, that is likely to have a significant impact in terms of the highway being a safer place to travel. Shortly after, the traffic chief, Mahendra Singh, assistant commissioner, came out and he said, basically, they don't get everything in place already. They get some checkpoint and it's more than checkpoint and they work here with stakeholders. And in other words, what he was saying, there's no need to implement the things that I recommended. That is the level of the thinking. Again, it's about the messenger, not the message. So I was a little amused this morning when I saw a letter. And let me read the letter. Then all along, I respectfully write, dear editor, I respectfully write to bring to your attention an urgent safety concern currently affecting motorists along the Linden-Suzdijk Highway, particularly in the vicinity of Long Creek, where the contractor, Namalco, is undertaking road construction works. It has been observed that a number of high-intensity construction lights have been positioned in a manner that creates significant visual impairment for road users during nighttime travel. The glare produced by these lights severely reduces drivers' visibility and situational awareness, thereby elevating the risk of collision and other potential catastrophic incidents. This situation represents a clear and present danger that warrants immediate corrective action to prevent loss of life, limb, and property. Furthermore, I respectfully request that all contractors operating along this critical roadway be required to install and maintain adequate and very visible signage to alert motorists to ongoing works, altered traffic patterns, and evolving road conditions. Given the extensive upgrade currently in progress, it is essential that road users receive timely and accurate information to navigate these areas safely. Additionally, I wish to highlight the pressing need for enhanced police presence along the highway, particularly during early morning hours when there is a heavy vehicular movement, especially by large truck is most prevalent. Numerous reports and first-hand observations indicate that some drivers engage in reckless and negligent behavior during these periods, further compounding the risk faced by other road users. Strengthened law enforcement visibility and targeted interventions would play a critical role in promoting responsible driving practices and deterring dangerous conduct. The Linden-Suzik Highway has been the site of far too many tragic incidents over the years. As the government continues to undertake these much needed and essential upgrades to this vital transportation artery and elsewhere, it is imperative that safety measures be intensified to ensure that motorists remain protected throughout the construction period. Proactive action at this time will not only safeguard lives, but also reinforce public confidence in the ongoing development work. I therefore appeal for urgent attention and coordinated response from the relevant authorities to address these issues without delay. And that is written by it's a science, Jermaine Figuera, former member of parliament. Figgy, welcome to welcome to the dance, man. I wrote about the safety and that important artery, and because of who the messenger is, they ignore. The traffic chief said they get the thing in place. So now that Figuera, who has now joined with the PPP, campaign the PPP, so now they might listen to that messenger, basically saying the same things that I said about a month or so ago. Same thing about the need for signs and all of those things. Traffic chief said, oh, we get them thing in place. So Figgy, now that you have the ears of the government, maybe you can call them I might read what you wrote. So maybe you can make direct communication with them. I mean, I don't want credit, When I made that suggestion, as I've said, I don't want credit. I just concerned for the safety of road users. You don't have a credit, slow with it. No, I want no credit, right? But as I've said, now that Jermaine Figuera, a former a coalition or up new member of parliament who gone over to the current government now, maybe now that he has made a similar call, maybe they're going to look at it now. Maybe they will now look at it. Let me bring in CC to obviously on that, and then we're going to move on. CC, I made a call some time ago, and nothing can happen. So now Figuera made the same call. Let me see what's going to happen.
I remember what is the messenger. And I'm certain that seeing that he's made that call, he's gone into writing, he's gone public, they're going to take action. They're going to take action. And I'll be happy if they take the correct action. They're going to take action. Let's wait and see. But as we say, they didn't want to say that we're doing this thing because pass through says so. No. They're going to say it because one of we own from Linden who crossed over the floor, he observed. So we're going to take action on it. And that's the way they're going to go.
Now let me address this issue related to tint. Let me address, and CC allow me, folks, because I got to give a background to this whole thing, And this thing came about because a couple of days ago, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, hold on, let me just see what the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs said that she issued a warning to police rank. She issued a warning. And here what she says. This is what is reported. Minister Onage Waldron orders police to remove illegal tint or face disciplinary action. And this is some credible source. It says, and the quote in here, the law applies to everyone equally, end of quote. With that declaration, Minister of Home Affairs Onage Waldron issued a direct warning to all police officers via our official Facebook page today. Any rank found driving a private vehicle with tinted windows that violate regulations and without a valid tint permit must remove the tint immediately. Quote, all police ranks are hereby placed on notice. Any rank who has tint on their private motor vehicles that does not comply with the regulations and who does not possess a valid tint permit must remove the tint immediately, end of quote. Officers were further instructed not to reinstall any tint unless a formal application for a tint permit is submitted and approved. Quote again, ranks are further advised that no tint is to be reinstalled unless an approved tint permit has been formally applied for and granted, end of quote. Waldron made it clear, failure to comply will lead to disciplinary action. Quote again, failure to comply will result in disciplinary action without exception, end of quote. Waldron's statement, while firm in tone, has already drawn criticism from for its performative nature and lack of clarity on enforcement. Quote, let it be clearly understood that the law applies to everyone equally. Those empowered to enforce the law must first uphold it, end of quote, she wrote. There has been no indication of how the ministry plans to verify compliance, nor any acknowledgement of long-standing concerns about uneven discipline within the force. With no official response from the Guyana Police Force, the announcement is being seen by some as a symbolic move, more about optics than real accountability. That is what the minister came out with that. Now, let me say this, and I'm going to read this thing because you get a lot of to and fro, a lot of to and fro. Following that edict by the minister, right? There was a flurry of activities in the police force to try and comply. Messages circulated and all this type of thing. They sent out message, Barbies. I saw the message that was sent. All the ranks was carried their vehicles to certain places to be inspected and all that type of thing. These are things that were, let me try to get the Barbies message, man. Yeah, like misquote these people. The message from Barbies, I can give you all just now. I can tell you all about the message from Barbies in a short while. I don't think I have it here, but I can tell you all what the message said. Right? Now, let me give you all a background to this thing. Y'all indulge me a little bit. Y'all indulge me. Let me give you all a background to this old tint regulation. First of all, to all those people who talking all the crap about tint being necessary and all this type of thing, let me say to you all, there is no prohibition on tints on motor vehicle in Guyana. There is no law saying that you can't have tint. Let's understand it. Let's work from there. There is no law in Guyana that says that a vehicle cannot have tint, right? What the law says, that the vehicle should not be so tinted to prevent a person standing from the outside seeing and identifying the person on the inside. In other words, it's the dark tint they're talking about. Them thing that black more than me. That's what they're talking about. And I am fully aware, perhaps more than most, of the whole background into this tint thing. And I again say, indulge me, let me explain to you how what happened. Because the tint regulation came into being when I was the traffic chief. I was the traffic chief. I and my officers put up the proposal. You know why? How it came about? It came about because one of these student bodies, or old student bodies from Queen's College, wrote a letter to President Chedi Jagan. It's so long this thing about Chedi Jagan, complaining about tint on vehicles, because in those days you had the phenomenon of doubling up and tripling up, where these minibuses will pack these school children, boys and girls, inside the vehicles, and then allegations were made of all type of unsavory conduct in the vehicles. If you remember, you had double up and triple up. I remember one particular bus had a reputation. The name of the bus was Trailer Load 41 route. And Chris was the driver. We became a little close afterwards when some pressure applied. Chris was the driver, right? And they complain about that activity. And Larry Lewis, as a commissioner, summoned me as a traffic chief and said he want us to put up a proposal to deal with tint, right? And what did we do? We sat down, we came up with a proposal, and we recommended that tint be prohibited on public transportation, minibuses and hire cars. That was a proposal, right? I was later told by the commissioner that when the proposal was sent to the president said vehicle is vehicle. Tint should be prohibited on all vehicles, not just public transportation vehicles. So we say, all right. So the process started, right? I think when the process started, it would have been Gadraj was the Minister of Home Affairs. I think he was. So the thing came into being. I was still the traffic chief. I had told you all this story before, that it was to come into effect when the regulation was made. It was to come into effect the 1st of April that year. Can't remember if it's 98 it was 90. I can't remember the exact year, but in the 90s. Larry Lewis, the commissioner, said, hey, I ain't implemented nothing on no 1st of April. There's All Fool's Day, right? Wait, so the thing was actually implemented, or we started to enforce the following day. Now, what happened then? There was the thing was so subjective. There was no objectivity in this piece of regulation. Kai said, you must be able to stand, see, and recognize the person inside. Well, right away you get problems. Because one man can say, yes, I can see clearly, like the song says, right? Johnny Nash. And somebody else can look the same thing and say they can't see. So you had a lot of discrepancies in the whole thing. And that is the way it started. Then I was transferred from traffic to Brickdam, 2IC to Henry Green. That was on the run-up to the 1997 elections, general elections, right? I went there. And my friend and mentor, Neville Denny from the Bank of Guyana, used to receive these security magazines. The bank subscribed to some place, I guess, security magazine. When he read, he used to send it to me for me to read. And I was sitting there one afternoon reading, and I saw this thing called tint meter, that there's something that we can actually measure the density of the tint. We did not know that at the time when the proposal was made for this tint regulation. So I wrote, as 2IC A division, I wrote to Larry Lewis, the commissioner, and pointed out, say, hey, we get something that we can measure this tint with, right? So therefore, we can have some objectivity to this whole thing. And then what can happen? Was fair to have it. I then was transferred back to traffic headquarters. And I tell you all, I spent 2 times at traffic headquarters. So I was transferred after the election, transferred back to traffic headquarters. And the task became mine to deal with this level, what level of tint should be permitted. And they're wrong, man, they get memory like me. And the person with whom I interacted to come up with the level of tint was no other than the current speaker, Manzoor Nadir. At the time, he was the president of the Ayakar and Minibus Association. So Manzoor Nadir, same person who's the speaker now. And I engaged him. And what we did. Well, I missed a point because before then, there's a particular businessman who, when he was very close, he told you Wednesday gone, used to get traffic advisory, we used to get business people involved in advising the administration of the force about certain things. This gentleman was part of that. And this traffic issue and tint came up, and he imported these tint meters. Not the police or the ministry in the force go. He imported a set of tint meters. Came to me at traffic headquarters, and then we decided now, with the same Nadir, we're going to get some vehicles with different levels of tint, and we're going to check, measure them, and to come up with some objective measurement. And we agreed. The police and the association, all them agreed they should allow for 65% light penetration. I then wrote to the commissioner, we wrote to the government to say this is what should be. That part was never taken up. So there's nothing, and let me say this, you would never see any legislation or regulation talking about this 65% what it's talking about. This is something that came about, but they never took the next step. I think they had to make some negative resolution or something like that in Parliament. That was never done. Because by the time the tint regulation came into being, as I said, Gadrad was part of the negotiation. Sam Hines is the man he was holding on as Prime Minister, who actually, I think, piloted the thing and signed it or something like that. So they never took the step to make sure that this 65% that they talk about. And then somebody asked a question, I saw it on social media, because even though you talk about tint, the regulation says that the same thing applies to other stuff like blinds and so on. You know, let's use the legal term. They said the same thing will apply mutatis mutandi or something, mutandi mutatis, something like that, some Latin thing. Check the law, it's there. So therefore, you can't get blinds and so on to prevent the same thing from seen inside. That is what the law say. And let me tell you something. When we discussed this matter, discussed it at length, the intention was never for the minister to be allowed to give people this permit and so on that you see going on. This is the part of the corruption of the process. We recognized at the time that there would have been vehicles in the country. There would have been vehicles on the way to the country with tint. And therefore, we agreed that once these vehicles in, they got to get some period to put themselves in order. And it was agreed 3 months. And you get an extension of a second 3 months. And it should not have gone beyond that. Because we recognize that there were three type of tint, not the density, 3 type of tint. You have a vehicle come into Guyana with clear windows, they carry to some shop, they put on tint. That is one, different levels, put on tint. That can come out easy. Then there were some vehicles that would come into the country with tint that can be removed easily as well. That's the second category. And then the third category was vehicles that come into the country and the glass itself is tinted. You can't remove that. You have to change the glass. So we recognize that and we say, well, those people will be given a first 3 months to put yourself in order. If you can't get it done in 3 months, then you get a second 3 months to put it in order. And if you can't get it done in the second 3 months, your fitness can revoke, the vehicle can't drive on the road. But then I got a shock when the thing was finally approved and so on, to see that the minister can grant not only this first 3 and second 3 we're talking about, for first 3 months, second, can grant application, some businessman or somebody apply and they get waiver of tint and authority. That was never part of the discussion, never, ever part of the discussion. And that is what has led to all this confusion now. That is what has led, where the minister now, you can apply to the minister and get a waiver so you can get your tint on your vehicle as black as possible. And then, of course, we all know by now of all the forgeries. We all know about the corruption. And I can say this without any fear of contradiction. Many of the things emanate from the minister's office, not the minister, from the Office of Home Affairs, where runnings going on with tint. Runnings going on with tint. People get certain contact and they can get tint permit. That was never, ever the intention. And let me say further. At the time, as traffic chief, I had the darkest tint on my car prior to the law going into effect. The darkest tint put in on my car by then by in Cummins Lodge. And when the law was to go into effect, as I told you, first it was the Monday, and then Louis said, nah, that is the end thing in the force. I sat down and took out every piece of tint off of my car. And I have never, ever put back tint on my car. Some of the car come with what they call privacy glass, which confirms the regulation. But all of a sudden, people want to get all sort of tint and all sort because how they corrupt the old process. The old process is corrupted. Now, having given you that background, we're going to talk some more. But let me bring in CC for CC to obviously say on what I have said so far. Right? But again, I say I can tell you this because when this thing came in, I was the main man behind the piloting of this old tint regulation. I let her come and dispute. Let me tell you further, before CC as they say. Let me tell further. The intention was to, and this was discussed, that following that initial period, that 3 months, customs was to get involved. And no vehicle that did not meet the requirement was to be cleared off the wharf. None. That was what the thing. The vehicles were not to be cleared. Custom was to, I think they had been giving them tint meter now to make sure they check. But everything get corrupted. Let me bring in CC now, man. Yeah, CC, go ahead, man.
Yeah, you said quite a lot there. And I remember, you know, I used to be part of some discussion in relation to the tint. But then when we're looking at what's going on now, you know, every vehicle is tint. Dark. We said dark more than it's a speed. And I'm looking at it, you know. For me, the minister role is policy. The commissioner got to deal with operational matters. Apparently, the minister has taken up the role as our correspondence or our messages of being operational. This shouldn't be. Paul, you know, we used to talk about levels of command. We talk about gold command, silver commander, bronze commander, where we say the gold commander sets the strategy, the policy, the silver develop the tactics, and bronze just do it. But when you get gold melting down to silver and bronze, and even silver going up to gold, and even going down back to bronze, and bronze playing a role of silver and gold, there will be confusion. And there's a whole lot of confusion and chaos going on with this tint story. Plenty. We'll go into further details. Plenty going on. Just like what happened on the road with the accidents and the other thing there. There's what happening now with the implementation or we're dealing with the issues relation to tint. There is confusion, there is chaos from the minister level right down to the bottom of the constable level. And unless they do some sensible work, you know, unless better judgment prevail, things won't be better.
Right. Again, let me. I had the same thing to mention. You know, you're talking about there's a regulation. Are we gonna go about all the flip flopping that occurred during the course of today? You got a regulation. Imagine the Minister of Home Affairs has to get involved to tell police that they must obey the law. Imagine that. That is what we have come to. That the minister, one to the commissioner of police, one to the traffic chief. And let me be real. And people who were in the system in my time know that them things are not, then no commissioner got to get involved. I, as a traffic chief or I, as a commander, will insist and ensure that people follow the law. But you have a minister of Home Affairs has to get involved to tell the police that they must follow the law. And the commissioner of police silent. The commissioner of police can't enforce, cause his ranks to follow the law. And in the past, they have issued repeated statements. Oh, rank must stop people like that. Only for inspector up must stop people in the road. What happened? People just disregard them, ignore them, because it's all talk and nothing else. All talk and nothing else. Let any police tell you when I was traffic chief or either wrong. You think that really is that? Let me give you two examples. One day as traffic chief, I was going to a meeting at police headquarters. Driver carrying me in. I saw a person on a motorcycle, civilian clothes, no helmet, right now to the compound. And of course, I turned back and I pursued him. Turned out they said he's some policeman, CID headquarters. Henry Green was in charge at CID at the time. And I charged him for failing to think. Green involved, telling me how this guy identified a cadet officer and he must get a break. I said, break? You tell me a policeman, police headquarters, where all the top rank there, he's audacious that he riding the bicycle out of the police compound without helmet and I must give a break. No, what a big story. Big story. I think Mr. Felix was the commissioner at the time. I had to let you know that you all sort of thing green talk about. Say, it didn't happen, sir. No, charge put before the court. He left the worker green, say he had been identified to be a cadet. I said, well, wrong material. Because if he is identified to be a cadet, and at that stage, he ain't obeying the law, as a constable, he ain't obeying the law, in police headquarters, when you put thing on you put pip on his shoulder, what are you going to do? What is he going to do? So you have people who are not doing, because, and the reason why men and them can't take action, because they themselves are breaking the law. I see Leroy Smith putting up some of them their vehicle with big tint and license plate out of order and all sort of thing. And let me say this. This I'm gonna address the letter that some of them wrote just now. Whether you get permission or not, no police officer should seek to have the vehicle so darkly tinted that he cannot be recognized. Get the regular tint that applies with the law. Because what is the perception? What will be the public perception when they see a big police officer driving a fancy vehicle and the vehicle black like SS Speed? You might have a permission yet, but you got to look at what the perception is going to be. And that's what policing is all about, how people are going to view you, whether people are going to respect you. Because even if you get permission, they know. So look, he driving the vehicle with dark tint and he telling me not to drive with tint. So it is important for them to understand that almost 99% of the vehicles driven by policemen, if you check on it, you're going to see they get obscure number plate and they get the same tinting and so on. You have got to make sure, you tell me the commissioner of police can't deal with that. The minister got to get involved. And I'm not blaming the minister to get involved, because the fact that the minister has gotten involved is an indication of this leadership thing that you spoke about. Lack of leadership from the commander of the police force, lack of leadership. And coming into this thing now, following the direction of the minister, they had a flurry of activities. What's get involved, all them get involved for take off tint from police vehicles, taking off tint and all that sort of thing. And then this morning, I think it is yesterday, I saw a letter in Kaichor News. I'm going to read them for you and I'm going to go through it. And here, let me tell you from the outset, the letter is signed by concerned police ranks. Concerned police ranks. But having read the letter, right, I am of the opinion that no police and rider, right, no concerned police ranks did not write that. What it says. We know the recent directive issued by the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, instructing all police ranks to remove tint from their private motor vehicles unless they possess a valid tint permit. While the principle that the law must apply equally to everyone is understood, the directive does not consider the real dangers that the police ranks face daily, nor does it reflect the long-standing relationship between the government and the joint services. Here, there's not a police like this. It goes on to say, successive PPPC administrations have traditionally maintained a strong rapport with the members of the discipline services. Year after year, ranks are publicly recognized for their contribution to national security. And during every election cycle, officers are reminded that the government values their work, their sacrifices, and their vote. Police ranks consistently support the country's stability, serve in every region without hesitation, and stand firm in the face of criminal threats that they will never fully appreciate. It is therefore disappointing that the very people who are expected to uphold the law and protect the nation are now being placed in a position that compromise their own safety. Tint on a police rank's private vehicle is not a matter of privilege. It is an issue of personal security and operational necessity. Ranks routinely arrest dangerous individuals, dismantle criminal networks, seize weapons and narcotics, and carry out operations that make them target, both on and off duty. Without tint, officers become highly visible and easily monitored by those who may wish to retaliate. Criminals can track their movements, identify their vehicles, observe their families, and compromise their safety with alarming ease. No officer should have to choose between protecting the public and protecting themselves and their loved ones. It is also important to acknowledge the environmental realities of policing in Guyana. Ranks spend long hours in the sun directing traffic, conducting investigations, working at scenes, and reporting and responding to emergencies. Tint provides basic protection against the harsh heat and glare, reducing fatigues and enhancing alertness on the road. These are not trivial concerns. They directly affect officers' performance, well-being, and safety. Given the long-standing relationship between the current administration and the joint services, one would expect that decisions impacting officers' day-to-day safety would involve consultation, understanding, and fairness. Instead, many ranks now feel dismissed, undervalued, and sidelined by a directive that appears to overlook the realities of policing. It sends the unfortunate message that officers are to be relied upon when needed, yet discarded when their own protection and comfort requires consideration. The solution is not to expose officers unnecessarily, but to implement a structured, transparent, and fair tint permit system specially designed for all police ranks. Such a system would ensure full compliance with the law while recognizing the unique risk that police officers face. Equal application of the law does not mean ignoring the unequal dangers on the job. Police officers deserve a policy that protects them as they protect the public. Respect for discipline services must be reflected not only in speeches, but in decisions that safeguard their lives, their families, and their ability to serve effectively. In closing, we respectfully call on His Excellency President Dr. Irfan Ali to consider the concerns of the men and women of the Guyana Police Force. Ranks continue to serve this nation with loyalty, discipline, and sacrifice, often under dangerous and thankless circumstances. We are simply asking for a policy that reflects the realities of our work and protect us as we protect the public. A fair and regulated permit system for police ranks would go a long way in restoring confidence, improving safety, and reaffirming the value that the government has always claimed to place on the joint services. First of all, as I said before, no police are right now. No police wrote that. No police wrote that. And no opposition person wrote that. And here, let me tell you before bringing CC. And they could say what they want to say. Following the directions of the minister and the flurry of activities by the police, right? Sometime this morning or last night or sometime then, right? They receive instructions from, as Big Smith said, from senior people, from the higher ups, right? That the only enforcement they should do on policing vehicles is to make sure that they don't have tint to the front windscreen. Imagine that. They say, them big one, rather than tap, tell them, say, don't enforce this thing what the minister said. In other words, the minister know what you're saying, right? Only make sure they don't have the front windscreen is not tinted. Imagine they got to tell police now. Let me understand this thing. Let me say, all right, they got tint to the side glasses. You got to tell police that they can't get tint at the front of the vehicle in front. That is the level of lawlessness that they have descended to. That is the level of lawlessness. And then what happened? Let me bring in CC at this stage, man. Let me bring in CC. I can't dominate this button too much, even though the bowling suite is what we call lampy-pumpy bowling. Let me bring in CC, man. Let me bring in CC. CC, this letter from the police. First of all, as I said, no police in right now. No police wrote that letter. Let me hear your view.
I agree with you, I remember we did statement analysis, I can remember when the FBI had to do statement analysis, and the instructor was so good to give us some of the memos of the director of the FBI, Louis Freeh's memos, not confidential, and we had real fun, So sometimes since I see a letter, see what to do, and say you don't come to certain conclusion. And he calling on the president. I don't think what the president should get involved in this kind of thing. What what they should have done first, they're trying last. Get a proper sit down and put up a proper legislation, and based on the legislation, come out with a good policy document so that all the confusion and all the chaos that is going on will not be there. And they should rush with breakneck speed. Get it down and put in on Tinton vehicle that is not something that you protect people, because police themselves have been exposing people. Here they had a drug raid, and they give you the names of the persons who wrong there. They had a special operation, and they give you the names and the rank of persons who wrong there. So they themselves are exposing their own ranks to danger, and not really they lack of tint. So they need to sit down, as a reasonable people, and come up with something positive. And if they don't have people in the police force, look outside. Look outside. You might get people who might be ready to assist. I know they won't want Conway and they want Paul Slow, but look, and you'll find people there who might be able to give them some proper, reasonable advice.
Yeah, and when you analyze this letter, while the principle that the law must apply equally to everyone is understood, the directive does not consider the real dangers that police ranks face daily, nor does it reflect the long-standing relationship between the government and the joint services. That is not police right there. Some politician wrote that. The long-standing relationship between the government and the joint services. Then they say years after years, ranks are publicly recognized for their contribution to national security, and during every election cycle, officers are reminded that the government values their work, their sacrifices, and their vote. Police didn't write that. Police did not write that. Then it goes on to say it is therefore disappointing that the very people who are expected to uphold the law and protect the nation are now being placed in a position to compromise their own safety. So they tell you if you don't get tint, your safety compromised. And as CC just pointed out, the Police Corporate Propaganda Unit is the chief of revealing the names and ranks and all this type of thing. And we spoke about it repeatedly. Where were these concerned police ranks then? When the Corporate Communication Unit, an official organ of the Guyana Police Force, will issue a release and identify the ranks who went on a drug raid, identify them by name and number and rank and all this type of thing. Identify the look. Police didn't write this, and the body who wrote it, as we said when you do the statement analysis, you can recognize immediately some politician, maybe they're trying to get at the minister. Minister, watch it. This seems like somebody trying to get at you, because after you having issued this statement, which I believe is a reasonable statement, which I believe you should have never had the cost to issue in the first place if the force was functioning properly. You got to tell policemen to follow the law. And not only now, long ago they issued us other statement. This one has reached perhaps another level. But the issuing statement, the commissioner and your predecessor and all them, since Silal Prasad time and perhaps even before, issuing statement, ranks are not to stop people willy-nilly on the road. The motorcycle patrols are not to do traffic duties. And all of those things are not, people just ignore them. People just, let me say this, talk for sun, talk for rain. You believe when Henry Green was commissioner, right? And he issued some instruction, and he gonna make sure it was there in force orders and so on. You dare say you're not gonna comply with Henry Green's instructions? You dare? But no respect is there now. That is the problem. The discipline has disappeared, right? But this is what they wrote here. It's here and here. I am saying this again. I am saying this. And remember, there is nothing in the law which says that you can't get tint on your vehicle. Nothing. They talk about the degree of tint. Someone get black tint. You can't see what's going on inside. And they turn them into a hotel and all sort of thing. That is why they want to have the tint. And let me say this, right? To be driving around the place, pull up at a stop sign, a stop light, or pull up anywhere, and a vehicle, a tinted vehicle, pulls up alongside you. It's a frightening thing. You don't know who is in there. You don't know what mama be pointing a gun at you. And I remember recently the police association, I think it was, in Barbados, brought this issue up with the government. And they have to then implement a regulation to prevent it. You don't know what is going on. And I'm saying all police vehicles, patrol vehicles, should be brought in compliance with the tint regulation. Yeah, you're going to need to have like special branch and CID. You might need to have a few vehicles that are heavily tinted because of the nature of the operation they might go on. But every time the canary, every last giant constable, they know they get the money from, but they're going to get a vehicle and the darkest tint you could talk about. The darkest tint is lawlessness. It's lawlessness. It reminds me of the incident in 2011 when the now commissioner driving a car, a fancy car, into the police compound, and he had to be confronted by another senior officer. Green makes some remark, and then the man, they look out there, look, there's a drug man car, he driving. A drug man into police headquarters driving a drug dealer's car, a known drug dealer. And his excuse was, well, he didn't deny that the car belongs to the particular person, but then he said he didn't know that the man is running drugs. Imagine that senior police officer, you don't know a man running drugs. You're driving the car up and down in the police compound. That is the level of lawlessness that you have. So I don't care what they say. As I've said, we went through a period in what they call, President Granger used to call the troubled period, where policemen were targeted and killed. McDonald was commissioner, 20-something policemen died in a short space of time, right? And there was never a clamor for tint and all this type of thing. Never. Men who were active on the road and deserve, if they had applied for tint, to make sure they get tinted vehicles. That never happened. But all of a sudden, and let me say this, despite what they're trying to say, tint is more a fashion statement than anything else. The tint is more a fashion statement than anything else. I am convinced. I was involved in operation for years, and I never ever saw the need for tint on the vehicle above the legal limit. Never saw the need for that. Oh, you get now, and if some little constable walking inquiry's office or somewhere, get a car, they got to get tint. The thing in traffic, as the people complain, you are there enforcing, policemen are there enforcing traffic, enforcing tint regulations, and their vehicle right there, heavily tinted, and they ain't got no permission. They have no permission. And I told you all this story with the permission. That is what corrupted the whole system. With the minister, and what gonna happen? Let me understand what will happen. Despite the efforts of the minister, you're gonna hear this body want tint, some businessman, some support of the government, and they're gonna get it. And they're gonna get it. That is what corrupts. Because again, it's perception. When you drive along the road, you see some vehicle with tint, some will get tint. Right? You're bringing unevenness, and it reminds me of a statement made by the vice president some time ago. I have it somewhere where he said they're going to do something to regularize the tint arrangement. These people don't have a clue as to how to deal with simple issues. And let me say it's a simple issue, tint. License plate, simple issues. Those are simple things. And take it from someone who served as traffic chief on 2 occasions. Simple to implement. But if you have a corrupt system, a corrupt process, you have ranks who are compromised. Ranks who are compromised, ranks who are not properly trained. What do you expect? What do you expect? People riding on the motorcycles, no helmet, banana. What they do? See, they got some campaign now, and I compliment them for the enforcement, not campaign. I've always been against this campaign syndrome. Enforce the law. Don't wait until you get them campaign, and then a couple of morning, you stop dealing with that. Enforce the law. Don't tell me about no campaign. And every time they think about it, they want photo opportunity. So the commander, big thing in the paper, the commander B division himself is out there dealing with motorcycles without helmet and registration. Commander himself. Photo opportunity, that is what they are about. Optics. That is what the optics. No substance. According to Nyland Wells, big lamp and no oil. so you can't light. That is what is going on. But it is sad to see what the Guyana police force has come to. Can't imagine the minister got to tell police officers, police ranks, not to comply with the law. And I have said they get instruction from high up. And then what happened? These people are here out there disingenuous. So Leroy Smith, Big Smith News Watch, pick up on this thing, and he wrote something. He wrote an article to talk about he said he wrote the same thing about the thing, all the instructions. And let me try to pull up and let me see if I can find what the instructions said about people with tint. Now, hold on, y'all give me a minute. I can tell you all what it said. The thing came out this morning. Traffic heads, good morning. With immediate effect, you are to have your ranks desist from carrying out any exercise or exercises for tint. This is for strict compliance. That is this morning. That is following the minister's direction, and that is following the flurry of activities. They receive instruction this morning. Traffic heads, good morning. With immediate effect, you are to have your ranks desist from carrying out any exercise or exercises for tint. This is for strict compliance. That is what they send out. And then they're going to come out now to tell people, no, they came out with a statement. Let me pull it up here. They came out with a statement to say that nothing like that ever happened. They came out with a statement to say they never issued such a directive. Let me read what they came out with the statement to say. Guyana Police, no directive to cease tint-related traffic operations. GDF warns public against spreading misinformation. Hear what it says. The Guyana Police Force has observed with serious concern several online statements asserting that the force has been directed to discontinue all tint-related enforcement exercises. The Guyana Police Force categorically refutes these claims, and as no such directive has been issued at any level of command. Regional commanders are hereby reminded that all members of the public are required to comply with the laws in Guyana, including the extraction and regulation of motor vehicles window tint as prescribed under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. Ranks are expected to continue enforcing all relevant statutory provisions in accordance with the established operational protocols. These unfounded publications constitute a clear act of public mischief and bear the potential of misleading right-thinking citizens, erode public confidence, and distract from the lawful mandate of the force. The Guyana Police Force cautions members of the public against circulating unverified information which may compromise public order or impede legitimate law enforcement operations, and encourage citizens to rely exclusively on the official communication channels for accurate information. Yeah, that's Condla Bond, the thing there, right? First of all, as I said, I supporting Big Smith. Yeah, I might find it surprising in the release he gave, because I too received confirmation that was sent out to the ranks. That was, and then they blow back. So Big Smith pick it up. Big Smith run with an article saying that they get this instruction not to enforce the tint regulation. And then they came out with this mendacious statement. And then the minister office too came out with some statement trying to refute. But Big Smith made a thing. He said he's standing by the article he wrote. And I am standing by him because it is true. They did say that. And it's confusion in the camp. Confusion. They sent out this morning to tell ranks not to reinforce the tint regulations. I know where it came from, but it came from high up, not to enforce tint regulation. I don't know if they misinterpreted the instruction they get from higher up, because my information is that they were instructed in relation to the route traffic, the policemen only enforce the windscreen to make sure that there's no tint on the windscreen. But if they had tint on the glasses, they were to leave that alone. I don't know if the communication get muddled, but then they send out this thing to say, stop enforcing tint regulation. They enter police alone, stop regulation. And then when Big Smith run with the article, then the call was a Big Smith lie. Well, Big Smith then left it there. He came out to say the Ghana police force is lying. And as stated, as a state agency that is supposed to like to talk about public trust and accountability, is a crime, shame, and disgrace. We stand by our story. Use our investigative skills and check all messages in your groups, and you will find the circular which was sent to police ranks at 8:42 a.m. November. He said Friday, November the 25th. The Minister of Affairs about releasing a policy document within a few weeks speak to the reality that the tint enforcement campaign was handled badly from the get-go, and the cat was put before the horse. Apparently, they have some plan to do something with the tint regulation, right? But as I've said, it's confusion in the house. Confusion in the house. That is what they have come to. Let me bring in CC. CC, again, I'm sure you would have seen, because it was circulated around many groups, the memo or message to stop enforcing tint regulation. Go ahead.
I saw it. I had a copy from authentic source. But here more confusion. This is a thing from Gordon Mosley about 2 minutes ago. Breaking. Home Affairs Minister has announced that with immediate effect, all vehicles will be allowed a 35% light penetration tint waiver. Security and diplomatic vehicles will have their own categories. Persons with darker tint have up until December 31st, 2025 to fall in line with the 35% tint allowance.
But permit me a piece there. There is nothing new. That is what it is. The 65-35 is what it has always been from the time I wrote to Larry Lewis way back in the 90s and point out that we get something named tint meter that you can measure the tint. If you go back, the older people might remember, there was even a photograph in one or more of the dailies with me as traffic chief demonstrating the use of the tint meter. It was a police officers' mess conference, and I was there showing them how the thing is done. They want to put on the glass, they want to put on the windscreen. So what that's released, what they talk about 65-35%, that's what it is. The law allows you, the regulation allows you that. There is no new arrangement. That is no new arrangement. That is what me and Mansoor Nadir, the current speaker, worked out way back when. All I got to go ask you, because that doesn't deal with corruption directly. So he might be inclined to give his view. We work out that a long time. That when you put the thing, 65% light penetration. And if my memory is, if my math's right, 65 and 35 now 100. Yeah. So what the minister is writing there now is what has always been. It has always been that, minister, in case they're misleading you, got the traffic chief and never know what's going on. It can was yet. As CC say, he was yet. He ain't get a clue. But I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that when we decided finally that we're going to have some objective measurement for the tint, 65-35 was the arrangement. 65-35. And then I saw something, another message too, more confusion. I know if you all this one, CC, where an officer got to now tell them that if they see a vehicle with tint and they suspect that the vehicle is not in compliance with the relevant regulation, it is only the licensing and certifying officer who can revoke the fitness and deal with the vehicle. Now, every time they can arrive on the road, a licensing and certifying officer is the one who is empowered by law to revoke the fitness of the vehicle for any defect and cause them to be corrected. I over this morning, officer will tell them that. Officer has to tell them that. Those things are basic things. Where have we gone? Where are we going? Let's see, let me bring you back in, man. Where are we going? That thing with the Harbor 6535 body is some, as I said, let me repeat for emphasis. When the thing came into effect first, we did not know that there was a machine or an instrument that you can measure the density of tint. We did not know that. So it was left very subjective. You have to be able to stand and see and recognize the pores inside. But once I discovered that there was a thing called tint meter, I then recommended that to Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis then tasked me to come up with a percentage. I invited Mansoor Nadir, who was the head of the Ayakar and Minibus Association, and we came up with a 65-35 thing that's since in the 90s. So what really they're talking about? Go ahead, my brother.
Let me throw a spanner in the thing. Do they have to collaborate those tint meters? I remember when we had wanted to introduce the radars, speed guns. I was a member of the National Bureau of Standard, and Larry Lewis asked me to find out from them if they could collaborate those speed guns. And they didn't have the ability to do that. They didn't have the technology. I remember we had to send some of those things to Trinidad to be calibrated. We didn't send all because it was very expensive. We sent some to be calibrated, because issues might come up in court in terms of those things being calibrated or not. So I know if the tint meters, if they got to be calibrated, or if the Guyana National Bureau of Standard has the equipment to calibrate those instruments.
I was thinking to myself, I said, look, let me reply to somebody say about banning. The person says here, they disagree with the banning of all tint in Guyana. And I repeat here for emphasis, maybe the person wasn't in the class earlier. There has never been a ban on all tint. Never, ever been a ban on all tint. It has been always that you can have. Right now, you can have tint. The minister saying so, because the minister just repeating what the regulation says. You can have, you're allowed to have tint. The question is the density. This 65-35% that the minister is now talking about was there from the time this objective measurement came into being. It was always there. When this thing came in. So don't run away. As I said, this student maybe is a new student. I have repeated this over and over. There has never been a ban on tint on motor vehicles in Guyana. In terms of the front glass, the windscreen, you shouldn't have no tint there at all. You were allowed a visor 6 inches from the top. 6 inches, no wider than that. No wider. You're not supposed to have no tint at all, no matter how thin it is on the front windscreen. None at all. That is what it always was. So I don't know, all this, again, is because of incompetence. You have all of this craziness going on. Because of incompetence. Yeah, the mic was muted a while ago, but I'm back on now. Sometimes you touch the key and the mic. So you got to make sure that the cursor is away from the mic signal, because if the cursor is there, sometimes you touch it inadvertently and it puts you on mute. So my apologies for that, student. My apologies. But again, it is it is disappointing. It is disappointing that an issue that I believe a simple issue like this got to get involvement of all these people. They ain't got better thing to do with all the crimes and people dying on the road. Tint is a big issue there now in the force and around the country. Tint, and this thing started out because policemen have refused to comply with the law, and their officers are unable to cause them to comply with the law. That is what we have come to. What happened to all those officers at all the levels? You believe, and I'm blowing my old trumpet, you believe when was a divisional commander, branch can say they get vehicle that tinted, you're mad? They will tell you they're not risking that with me. They're not going to risk that. You have to follow the law. And as I've said repeatedly, if you believe that the law is not adequate, then lobby for changes to be made. Lobby for changes to be made. But you can't openly flout the law like that. I made the point you can't break the law to enforce the law. If you are a law enforcement officer, you have to lead by example. Again, I ain't blowing it. I just make sure when I drive within the speed limit. My seatbelt always on. I learned that from working with the United Nations long before seatbelt law became mandatory in Guyana. I work with the UN. You dare not let it catch you driving any one of them UN vehicles without wearing your seatbelt. The Malaysian military battalion, them MP, they catch you driving without seatbelt is trouble, big fine. So I always wore my seatbelt from since then. Right? You got people, cell phone, police officers on duty, traffic duty, police officers driving marked police cars. They're up on cell phone. And sometimes supervisors are in the same vehicles. And you want people to respect the force? How people are going to respect you and respect the force when you're doing things like that? Can't work. It will not work. It will not work. But we have spent some time on this subject. Let me see, as we come into a close, I have some other stuff to talk about. I don't know if I should start on today. I'm talking about a statement made. I'm going to start it. CC, we're going to start it, and maybe we come back to it on the next program. And I'm talking here now about a statement made by the president. President. Let me find it. Let me find the statement. It says here, this is today's Tabruk News. It says President Irfan Ali on Wednesday warned the drivers who continue to ignore their traffic tickets will face the suspension of their license within 48 hours. He said the move targets top offenders who have failed to settle their fines despite repeated opportunities to do so. Speaking at a reception hosted by the British High Commissioner, the president said the Safe Road Intelligence System has issued about 42,000 speed tickets so far. Only close to 10,000 have been paid, according to him. The names and photos of the worst offenders will soon be published in the newspaper as part of efforts to curb the growing disregard for road laws. Ali said the government intends to let the system work as designed. He stressed that the country cannot continue to invest in modern road safety tools if citizens refuse to follow the rules meant to save lives. Earlier this month, Traffic Chief Assistant Commissioner Mahendra Singh reported that 21 drivers have already had their license suspended this year for various violations. Speeding remains the biggest concern, with drivers reaching dangerous levels of up to 130 kilometers per hour. Singh added that the speed cameras now active at 26 locations have supported more than 32,000 speeding cases so far, along with 1,428 cases of driving under the influence. Ali also said, our police cars and police ramps will be equipped with smart meters and smart cars before the end of the year, so that electronically verifying everything will be recorded and stored. He explained that this will allow every movement to be recorded and stored electronically, reducing the need for human intervention and building greater accountability in policing. Meanwhile, well, they go on now to tell the minister over face issued the warning and so on about policemen. Now, they got a lot of things I want to discuss. Time ain't gonna permit me to discuss all, but let me bring in CC to have a say there, and then I'm gonna go back. I gotta give CC little button. They can't get here the non-strikers in all the time. CC, the president talked 42,000 tickets and only 10,000 paid. Let me hear you on this, man.
Well, the first thing is that the cameras that are set up, and on San is 26 different locations, that it was not properly thought out that you issue a ticket, you got to see it to the end. No, they're saying that if you caught on camera, they will send you a ticket. But you caught on camera and you wouldn't know who is the driver. You get a vehicle number, but you don't know who is the driver of the vehicle. And according to how I know the regulation is that what they gotta do is to contact the owner, serving with a notice of identity for him to say who was the driver. And if and there's between 14 days, and if he cannot identify the driver, he gotta take the rap. But it goes further than that. That for reckless, careless, dangerous driving or exceeding the speed limit, for you to have a successful prosecution, you have to warn the man at the scene of the accident, or within 14 days, serve the driver with a notice of intended prosecution, or within 14 days, you charge him or you summons him for the offense. Now, here's it. Ticket is issued. I don't know who is really monitoring on the side of the police, because if you get 42,000, somebody has got to pick up that information and go to court and file what we call a summons, where they write up the complaint. Some police has got to be a complainant, and the matter goes before the magistrate. If the person turns up for day to court, magistrate can deal with him. He plead guilty, he could be dealt with there. Not guilty, the case could be postponed for trial. But what happens to those thousands and thousands of cases where drivers have not been identified within 14 days? And who put in the cases before the magistrate? Okay, let's say, for example, you find a driver, put them you put up your documents to the file at the court, goes before the magistrate, the person doesn't turn up. The magistrate has the opportunity to do what they call ex parte trial. And in this ex parte trial, police has got to come and give the evidence, not the cameras, not AI. Police has got to come and give the evidence, and then the magistrate will rule one way or another. That because a matter for the magistrate says, yes, that is guilty. Due process has got to proceed. Due process got to proceed. So it's mind-boggling that they get thousands and thousands and thousands, there are thousands and thousands of cases if the police is there efficient, that will go before the magistrates, and the magistrate will have to do ex parte trial. Magistrate will have to do ex parte trial. Imagine a magistrate get 10,000 cases ex parte trial to deal with. You know, they didn't really look at the thing properly, and they didn't really understand the process. And if I fail to pay a fine, there's nothing in the law that says that my driver license would be suspended. I've been running the traffic law. Nothing in there I've seen to indicate that if you fail to pay a fine, your driver's license will be suspended. The president said within 48 hours, perhaps the president get his own law that he's dealing with. You have to go for a trial, and you got to be convicted. And for you to be suspended, we're talking about reckless, careless, and dangerous driving. And we're talking about when persons get charged with causing death by dangerous driving, then is when you suspend their license pending the determination of the charge. On the other hand, if you get convicted, your driver's license could be, or you could be disqualified for certain offenses. But we're talking about suspension of driver's license because you don't pay a ticket. What they're doing with this is 42,000, 10,000, so you get 32,000 cases that the police are supposed to bring up and put in front of the magistrate. Put maybe complainants, magistrate, so the magistrate could deal with them. Well, that is not being done. And I'm saying ex parte trial, I will give a magistrate maybe an order of excellence who would deal with 20,000 ex parte trial within a short period of time. They didn't think about the thing properly, Paul. They didn't think about the thing properly, so just the whole thing more confusion.
Yeah, I'm glad for that explanation, and I'm gonna add my bit to it. Let me say this. I don't know. Maybe when they talk about this suspension, I think maybe they have changed the law. Maybe. Let me give them that. Maybe they have changed the law. But a traffic ticket is a conditional summons. Let me go through it. Folks, y'all understand this. A traffic ticket issued to you is a conditional summons. And what are the conditions? If you accept the offense alleged, then you can go to a prescribed place and pay the fine. I think the fine of traffic ticket is $7,500. So if they stop you, you charge you your ticket for running the light, and you accept that you run your light, on the ticket, it will state the offense, it will state the section that created the offense, it will also tell you the date that you have to go to court if you want to contest the ticket. It tells you the date you have to go to court if you want to contest the ticket. So if you do not want to contest the ticket, you go to some magistrate office, some clerk office, and you pay your $7,500. And the matter done there. However, they have to have a system. A system has to be integrated for them to know that you have paid this ticket. Understand it there clearly. Now, people say no song. Those of you who are not hearing, please, well, if you're not hearing, you can't hear what's saying, but they got to reboot because we having song for the longest while. So maybe you could call the person, you see the person say no song, call them and tell them, let them log out and log in back. Now, so you get a ticket, you decide you're going to pay your pay. The system has to be of such that they know that you pay this ticket. If you do not pay within the prescribed time, as CC explained, if you do not pay in the prescribed time, then you got to go to court and contest it. We saw a case not so long ago. I think it was Dominic Gaskin, former minister, who claimed that he got a ticket. He went to contest it at Diamond, only to discover that they never called the case. And they claimed that they called it. That was a letter in the paper. So you can go and contest the ticket. You can go and contest it. I never run the light, whatever. But the key to that now, because when you appear in court to contest the ticket, the person who issued the ticket has to give the evidence, got to go in the witness box swear and give the evidence. Now they're talking about this smart system, smart thing, what they call it, whatever they call it, right? A person decides to contest the ticket, as Mr. Gaskin did some time ago. Who giving the evidence? Who is going to give the evidence of the alleged violation? I really want to know. They must explain these things to people because I'm at a loss. Who is going to go into the witness box to give the evidence of this violation so that the person can be convicted? Pray. Maybe the Attorney General, maybe the traffic chief, maybe, well, not the commissioner. The commissioner can't explain nothing. Maybe the minister, being a lawyer and a former magistrate. Tell us. Explain the system to the public. President come and talk about suspending license. Oh, wait. Has the law been changed to allow for suspension under those circumstances? And whose license you're suspending? Because the camera and this automated system that they have can't determine who was the driver. Cannot determine who was the driver. It will say who is the registered owner of the vehicle. So PPP PPP number got to be PPP not or not 7 is the car. You check to see in whose name that car is registered to. And it's there getting the ticket, but there's nothing saying that the owner of the car was the driver. So how do you deal with that? Let me get a real thing. I don't think. Imagine you have a car, right? Registered in your name. PPP 007. You got a little thing at the bottom, license to Lake Bamsey, right? That is your car license plate. All right. You left the car, some friend, and so on. You gone overseas for an extended period of time. The friend run the traffic light and the ticket is generated. Where will they send the ticket? They will send the ticket to the registered owner of the vehicle at his address, and he is overseas for an extended period of time. So he never get this ticket. He never gets the ticket. So you're going to suspend the license just like that. This thing was carefully not thought out. This was carefully not thought out. They come and they see thing operate. Yeah, in the States, you run the light and the camera catch you and so on. They send the thing to you with your license plate, the red light, and show you where you were when the light come on and so on. And they send it to you. But they have a mechanism to deal with it. The laws cater for that. The ticket comes to the registered owner of the vehicle. And because they can't identify who was the driver at the time, it doesn't go towards any demerit point. It doesn't it does not go towards that because the camera can't tell you who was driving. They will tell you the registered owner of the vehicle, and the ticket is sent to that address. Right? The ticket is sent to that address. Again, they come up with these things. They're not carefully thought out. And let me address this issue about the suspension. This is a matter we'd have to come back to at some subsequent time. It is too important an issue for us to leave you dangling, students. It is too important an issue because people are going to be bullied, people are going to be railroaded, and it isn't fair. It is not fair. They're talking about suspension. The law, as I know it, again, I say, if it is that they have amended the law, tell people that they must come and educate the public that the law has been amended. So that if you fail to pay the ticket, as the president is saying, that your license can be suspended. And look, they're going to put your picture in the paper. So it's a name and shame. What he says, according to him, the names and photos of the worst offenders. Who are the worst offenders? How do you determine the worst offenders? You see, they come with these statements, but because we have been trained to do statement analysis, we can see the BS, right? He said, and here, let me back up. Let me back up. Because it says here, speaking at a reception hosted by the British High Commissioner. Oh my God, Mr. President. The British High Commissioner hosting a reception. And that is where you're going to talk about 42,000 traffic ticket issue. That is where you're going to talk about a reception. The reception had anything to do with traffic? I don't know. But that is where you go. That is where you choose to go and talk about 42,000 tickets issued. And according to the little maths, a ticket is $7,500. And therefore, if 42,000 tickets were issued, we're talking over $300 million there, you know. That's the calculation. I do the little maths, man, and let me know. Me, I know maths, man. But if you are issuing 42,000, or if you have issued 42,000 tickets, and the fine for a ticket, I think, is $7,500, there's about 300 million. And then you say less than, close to 10,000, have been paid. That is less than 25% paid. Less than 25%. And again, doing the sums, it means about 75 or something like that $1 million only collected from $315 million. It means $240 million have not been paid in ticket. And they're singing this story, man. There's something to sing about. A 20-something%, 24, 25% success rate in terms of people paying the ticket. And that is what you're ashamed to go and talk about that. And then able to tell you, you know, they say, according to him, that is the president, the names and photos of the worst offenders will soon be published in the newspapers as part of efforts to curb the growing disregard for road laws. Who are classified as worst offenders? How do you classify worst offenders? See, they make these bland statements. You got to analyze it. You publish it in the newspaper. So you're spending more money now. And watch to see where you can publish. Watch to see which newspaper you can publish. Chronicle, enough money for the people, man. Chronicle, you're going to see it publish. Ghana Times, you're going to see it publishing. You might catch, a Stabrook might catch a piece. Kaicho might catch a piece, but I doubt it. You see how these people operating? You see how they're operating? So you get all these tickets not paid. All. As I said, how do you, when you say you're going, who picture you're publishing? Whose picture you're publishing, Mr. President? The driver? How you know who is the driver? How do you know who is the driver of this vehicle? As CC pointed out, I remember as traffic chief, once something like that occurs, the law as it currently is, again, I said, maybe, I know they're going to change them, if they're going to amend it. The law as it currently is, you serve a notice of identity on the registered owner of the vehicle. The registered owner of the vehicle. And the registered owner, by law, is obliged to provide you with the name of the driver. You're going to tell you what time. This vehicle, at so and so time, you got to tell who is this, who was driving the vehicle at that time. And the registered owner has a responsibility to then tell you who the owner was, who the driver was. And if the registered owner fails to do so, then the registered owner bears the liability. But you just gone just saw on the side, the camera take out somebody speeding and boop. And CC made a valid point. The law is clear. If you're going to talk about dangerous and reckless driving, I know what they're charging for. Maybe they're just charging for exceeding the speed limit. But I don't think they can charge you anything more because it requires the person to be warned of prosecution, right? They get a form and everything. But when you talk about suspension, Section 113.1 of the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act makes it clear. If any person is charged with manslaughter arising out of the use of a motor vehicle or with contraventions of Section 36 and 37, Section 36 talking about causing death by dangerous driving, Section 37 speak about reckless and dangerous driving. So they're saying if you're charged with contravening that, the licensing authority, who is the Minister of Home Affairs, with the approval of the Director of Public Prosecutions, who is Shalimar Aliak, can order the suspension of the driver's license of the person so charged, pending the determination of the charge. So as it is now, it's only 3 offenses you can have your license suspended for. Manslaughter arising out of the use of the motor vehicle, under Section 36, causing death by dangerous driving, or under Section 37, reckless or dangerous driving. So if a person, and let me say this again, as I've said before, driving above the speed limit is not per se dangerous driving. You can drive above the speed limit and not be dangerous. The law says so. The law says that. And that is why they have a special offense called they say exceeding the speed limit. Exceeding the speed limit. You can exceed the speed limit and not be dangerous. Conversely, you can be well within the speed limit and still be dangerous. I don't know who advising the president and these people. They're getting share ramgoat advice. I don't know who advising them to come with these statements that are so palpably wrong, make the president looking real bad. Make the president look terrible when he come with this statement. And look where he choose to go and make the statement. The man choose to make the statement that the British High Commissioner, speaking of a reception hosted, I know where it was, but I said the reception was hosted by the British High Commissioner. My Lord. Let me tell you something too, because I see the running with us, the people, about the magistrate. A magistrate does not have the authority to suspend a driver's license. I see someone in Bobby's that say magistrate, they suspend. Magistrate does not have the authority to suspend the license. Section 31(1) of the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act makes it clear any court before which a person is convicted of any criminal offense in connection with the driving of a motor vehicle, not being an offense under Part 8, may, in any case, except where otherwise expressly provided by this Act, and shall, where so required by this Act, order him to be disqualified from holding or obtaining a license for such period as the court thinks fit. So the magistrate can order disqualification from holding or disqualification. In other words, if you have a license already, if you have they can disqualify you from holding. And if you don't have a license, and you can obtaining. So it's not only having it and holding it, but if you do not have, you can get disqualified from obtaining a driver's license for a period. Let Landalal explain them the thing to you all, man. Let explain. So the magistrate has that power, and then they say, in any case, and shall, where a person is by virtue of a conviction disqualified from holding or obtaining a license, or where an order disqualifying any person is made, or where so required by this Act, or that particulars of the conviction and any other disqualification to which the convicted person has been subjected to, be endorsed on any license held by the offender. I asked a question before, and I'm asking again. This law was created at the time when you had a kind of book thing. You know the book, the little red book, and they could have write in it, endorse it. Now that the thing has evolved, you get this little plastic thing. How does the endorsement work? That was the thing that Mahendra Singh and them should sit down and try to tell Nandalal what type of adjustment or what type of law or regulation should come in place. And then it goes on, the last part I can read here for you also, provided that if the court thinks fit, any disqualification imposed under this section may be limited to the driving of the same class or description as the vehicle in relation to which the offense was committed. So in other words, you got a license, you can drive minibus, you can drive private car, because you know to get the minibus, you got to get the special category. You can drive truck. they say if the offense to which you're convicted relates to the driving of the truck, the court can decide to suspend that only. You can only suspend it from driving a truck, but you can be allowed to drive the car and the minibus. That is what the law says. Not me saying so. That is what the law says. And these are the things that should be taught and explained to people. But they're doing that. They come and tell you how they're going to suspend license if a person didn't pay ticket and all that. As I said, this subject is serious enough. So we're going to come back on the same thing with the tint and the same thing with the suspension license. Look, let me understand. All they're telling us here, they're admitting what we have been saying all along. It is madness. It is chaos. It's a lawless culture. The problem is they are not thinking about how they're going to go about dealing with it. It's just a lot of piecemeal, a parcel of arrangement. So you're going to make big statement and you're going to look stupid at the end of the day. The minister came out with a statement. Policeman must comply with the law. A simple statement like that has caused so much confusion. So much confusion. Divisional commanders, helter-skelter, bring in vehicle. The one from Bobby's sent out message. Bring all your vehicle. Strip. I had a video. I was trying to upload it. I ain't getting through. I had some technical difficulties. Where policemen, they're stripping off tin from vehicle. Then this morning, stand down, as you were, as we say in the military, as you were. Then they come out and say, Big Smith run with the thing, say, oh, we never said that this is mischievous. If he mischievous, charge him. I dare y'all. If he is mischievous, as you're claiming, then charge him for creating public mischief. Charge him for creating public mischief. They count in his statement trying to intimidate people. He said that he's standing by his story. He is standing by his story. Let me bring in CC for his closing, and then we're going to give you a look forward. CC, your closing remarks, my brother.
Let me give them another piece that they can study overnight. Section 45 of chapter 51:02. Talk about restrictions on prosecution under certain sections. Here it is. Where a person is prosecuted for an offense under any of the provision of this act, relating respectively to the minimum speed at which motor vehicles may be driven, to reckless or dangerous driving, and to careless driving, he shall not be convicted unless either A, he was warned at the time of the offense was committed that the question of prosecuting him for an offense under one or other of the provisions aforesaid would be taken into consideration, or 2, within 14 days of the offense, a summons for the offense was served on him, or C, within the said 14 days, a notice of intended prosecution specifying the nature of the alleged offense and the time and place where it is alleged to have been committed was served on him or sent by registered post to him or to the owner of the vehicle at the time of the commission of the offense, provided that a failure to comply with this requirement shall not be a bar to the conviction of the accused. In any case, where the court is satisfied that neither the name and address of the accused nor the name and address of the owner of the vehicle could with reasonable diligence have been ascertained in time for summons to be served or for a notice to be served or sent to the address, the accused, by his own conduct, contributed to the failure. Now, getting back to the president, and where he made a statement. Perhaps he taken his pattern off a prayer, Remember prayer went to the American embassy and raise up Chedras to display. Now, we talk about the training school and we must keep it in focus. Keep it in focus. Things still happening there, sexually and otherwise. And let me get this little one. They had a parade at 4 o'clock on Monday morning held by a sergeant, a corporal, and 2 constables, checking on persons who were supposed to be at the college. And according to record, it codes 399, 7 people were absent. 404, 4 people absent. And here this one, 26B. That's the course from Borbies. And the sun they came down for trainees luncheon, which will be held today. 29 of them, all 29 were absent. And 22G, there's a course from Essequibo, Richard Feichel. I think they changed the name. 15, all 15 were absent. So there's what going on in the place there. Trainees walking in and walking out as you like. Imagine a whole course from Borbies gone. A whole course from Essequibo gone. 399, 7 absent without leave. So many things going on in the force. I think I'm going to stop here, Paul.
Yes, my brother. Yes. A lot of wrong things. I mean, if at that level, that type of indiscipline is being displayed and I can rope it in, we are not going to happen. Because if you start out being indisciplined, it ain't going to get better. Right? It is not going to get better. Now we say this as we close this Friday afternoon. Right? Let me tell you this. Look, this here, man. Let me give you all something to think about. This is a bridge. This is a bridge. See a bridge into a cemetery. By corruption in there, even the grave. They're only voting, but this bridge is said to have cost $1.2 million dollars. This bridge is said to have cost 1.2 something million. Let me give you the exact figure. They say $1,202,624. This is what this bridge costs. I'm telling you, me, what? That is what they say. It's not me say so. $1,202,624 Guyana money for this bridge. So it's over 5,000, 6,000 US dollars for this bridge into the cemetery. That is what you have. You tell me there's not corruption? You want to tell me that is not corruption? Right? And then the next thing, today is Friday. I noted, some people just look forward to the news out. Big Bacchanal just the other day, we did need and she Makume. Like I'm wasting this tune on Wednesdays now, man. Because I understand yesterday again, there was no press conference by the vice president. No press conference. I tell you all this sickness that are called Lamborghini-itis. This Lamborghini-itis sickness is a terrible thing, As I said, luckily it's not contagious, but to the person who suffers from it is a terrible thing. Lamborghini-itis. So I think by my reckoning, it's 3 consecutive Thursdays we have not had the opportunity to hear what the vice president has to say. 3 consecutive Thursdays. That got to be a serious bout of Lamborghini-itis. That terrible disease for which I understand there is no cure. Lamborghini-itis, for which there is no cure. If it is that the vice president is suffering from that or any other disease, I think you should let me know so we could pray for him, man. Pray. Some people will pray for a speedy recovery, and some people will pray for the pains to end quickly, right? I don't know. But let us know. 3 consecutive Thursdays, that is alarming. Because since election on the 4th of September, I think he has had 2 or 3, the most 3 press conferences. Way prior to that, every Thursday, we used to get it. Every Thursday. You remember, like, I tell you Lamborghini-itis, part of the symptoms of Lamborghini-itis. Remember, I tell y'all, y'all don't remember these things, part of the symptoms here.
I don't give a shit about his Lamborghini. But
symptoms of Lamborghini-itis, folks. Let me wish you all a a restful and productive weekend. A productive, restful weekend. I know people start looking forward to Christmas. By the time we come again, God's Spirit Life on Monday, it's we into December. Monday is the 1st of December. And talking about the 1st of December, let me warn you early. I have court on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, 9:15. Yeah, I have court. I will try to make it. I don't know how long the court will last. Based on what happened on the last occasion, I think it's for the prosecution to reply to submissions made by my lawyers. Right? That is a case where they say, I was going to take my time to think the thing. Anonymity of complainant. Only body ever in Guyana ever get charged with that offense is me. Anonymity of complainant. So that is some submissions were made by my lawyers, and as I understand it, on Monday, the prosecution is supposed to reply. So I don't know how long that is going to last. So therefore, I don't know if you're going to have it at 11 o'clock, if you're going to get classes at 11 o'clock. But we're going to have classes. If you can't make it at 11, I will communicate with you when we are going to have class. Right? So I warn you all early. I don't know if I'll be able to get it at 11 o'clock. Some of y'all going to come and still molest me, you know. Right? Somebody going to come and still molest me. Somebody talking about road fatalities. Let's pray that from now and when we meet again, we are going to have other tragedy in Guyana. Let's pray and hope that we have a crime-free, well, it's a crime, major crime, free, fatality-free. Let's pray for that. Let's pray. Folks, we have had a good afternoon. As I said, God's life, and if things go well, we're going to meet again Monday. Not sure yet about the time, but just stay tuned. As the timing is confirmed, I am going to post that. So in the meanwhile, I invite you to stay well. I've always said, so stay well. Look after yourself, look after your loved ones. Until we meet again, bye.